Welcome to Story Unfolded, everyone. We'd like to introduce you to Aaron, Keisha, and Michelle, a story about a mother and her two children who walked the road of addiction, not only together, but separately. We feel like you will be blessed by this story unfolded of reconciliation and restoration. Join us now as we share Keisha's Story Unfolded, Part 2.
I'm Keisha, and this is my story. My brother and I, we had a great childhood. We never needed for anything. I was baptized as a child, so I knew who God was. We had a lot of freedom, my brother and I did. And whenever I was 15, I was introduced to meth. It led to problems through high school, but I managed to graduate, and so whenever I graduated, I moved off. Everywhere I did move, I would find a new group of people and, continue to use. And in 2004, my brother and I, we moved to Louisiana. We were there for close to a year before my mom eventually moved to Louisiana with us. We started using meth together. We were all living together. And so it was just never stable, And in 2006, I got pregnant with my first son, Mason. And at that point, it was easy to just quit. I stayed sober for, the duration of my pregnancy and for quite a while after Mason was born. And it was just, I never could stay clean for a very long period of time. In 2009, my mom and I decided to move back to Texas. Around that time, while we were living in Waco, that I began to notice that I had a problem, that I was an addict. And towards the end of 2010, I was in a very abusive relationship. And I decided at that point that I needed to come home. I was a single mom, living on my own, and I was still using with my mom. She lived next door to me, so it was easy for us to, use together. And, she always helped me with Mason. And in 2012 is the beginning of the darkest time in my addiction. I was involved in a relationship where he was really controlling of my life and my mom's involvement in my life. I quit my job. I pretty much began to lose everything. My car, I did have my house, but all my utilities were getting cut off. And so my mom called CPS. And when I found that out, I got scared and I left town with this man and my son. In August of that year, I finally had the courage to leave him. At that point, I felt hopeless, really. I felt like I had failed as a mother. My dad and my stepmom, Jolinda, they got custody of Mason. They offered me help, to go to a rehab and get help and be able to still be a part of Mason's life and get him back. And I was granted a weekly visit once a week. And every time I went to see him, he would cry, that he just wanted to come home, and he didn't understand why he couldn't. And I was so mad at that point. I blamed my dad and my stepmom for everything, that it was their fault that all this happened. And again, not taking responsibility. And I went on for probably about 5 or 6 months seeing Mason, that weekly visit. I was supposed to be going to counseling. I think I went to 2 appointments, and I didn't agree with what the counselor was telling me. It was Mother's Day of 2013. That was the last time that I saw Mason for 2 years and 1 month. I felt like it was better for him to not see me the way that I was, because I was in a really bad place. Still wanting to do the drugs, but still wanted to be a mom, and I couldn't do both. So I left town and spent a summer away from Pampa with some friends. And that summer was kind of a changing point in my life. I began to realize how evident God was in all situations. I continued to use through all of this. And at the same time, though, I was trying to fit God in my life, but the addiction had too big of a hold. I mean, I could tell people how to get help and tell people what the answer was, but I couldn't live it. I couldn't walk it out. In September of 2014, I found out I was pregnant with Easton. And he was born in January of 2015. I wanted to leave and go do drugs. That's what even, having this newborn baby, and it was that strong on me. So a friend of mine found a treatment center that I could go to, and I could take Easton with me. Easton was 2 weeks old, and I got there and I was scared to death. I had no clue what the future held. It was a 90-day program. A couple of the girls there, they just kept telling me, come to church, come to church with us. So finally I gave in. The church had the biggest impact on me. They were so welcoming. They never looked down on any of us who went, and here we are coming from a rehab center into their church. They loved on us, they welcomed us, they never asked questions as to, why I was there with a 2-week-old baby, The preacher one day, he told a little bit of his testimony, and his testimony was that he used to be a drug addict. He had a big impact on me with his testimony. It came time for me to get ready to leave. This was in April of that year, and I had no idea what was going to happen. Here I am leaving with a 3.5-month-old baby. I had no job, I had no money, and God provided. And everything just completely fell into place. Whenever I came home in April, my mom kept encouraging me, go find a church, and I was still not comfortable with that. So I came home in April. I found out sometime in May of that year that my dad and Jolinda were going to try to adopt Mason, because I had been absent in his life for 2 years. They met with me and told me, that the course they wanted to go and the reasons they wanted to adopt Mason. And it was heartbreaking, and I told them at that point, if they would just give me a chance, to prove myself, I promised them it'll be better. So they finally agreed at the end of June to let me see Mason. I saw Mason for the first time after it had been 2 years and a month. It's probably about 2 or 3 weeks later that they agreed to let me start meeting with them, at the park during the day or something. And Mason at that point asked Jolinda if I could bring Easton so he could see him. So that was in July of 2015 that he got to meet Easton. And ever since then, they have the greatest relationship. I believe it was September of that year. Pampa held a Hope Crusade at the high school. And my mom had come from Amarillo and drugged my brother along. And my brother got saved that night at the crusade. And it was a man from Calvary Baptist Church that counseled him. And he started encouraging Aaron to come to church and stuff. So we went, and I just fell in love with the pastor. His passion for people, his love for people, I've never had a church, that would just that set something up for some new members and some new believers, you know, that who weren't really understanding, you know, God's word and really what God wanted for our lives. He set that class up for us, and that went on for probably 3 or 4 months. We were in class with him. Through the course of all this, I just felt like everything was just falling into place. Everything was being restored. Everything was just God was turning everything that had happened into something good. You know, I was able to open up and really talk to my stepmom. So it was just everything, you know, began to be restored. Thanksgiving rolled around that year, and they invited my mom to spend Thanksgiving with us. And you know, my mom and my dad have been divorced for, you know, almost 30 years, and they had Thanksgiving together. Every family gathering we had, they invited my mom also. You know, we were a family again, and it was God that did that, you know. It was no other explanation but the promise of restoration. And you know, just I get to be involved with all of his stuff, you know, his football, he shows pigs. I just get to be involved with all of that. You know, since everything has been restored and the addiction has been buried, it's, you know, there's struggles also still in life, you know, and God has provided, because God is the one who will restore. He is the one who will deliver. He is the one who will redeem you from the mistakes that you've made. And He is the one who forgives you regardless of anybody else does. So I think the biggest thing is to know that there is hope out there and that you can find that hope in God. I'm Keisha, and that's my story unfolded.